And welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Deidre Lambert-Bounds. I am president of Ignite Social Media, but I'm also a very proud board member of the Sphinx organization. And I am here today with a panel of three really dynamic leaders. Our topic today is it's young, gifted, and bold, and it's the power of the power of emerging leaders in culture change. And I'm just thrilled today to share the stage with Leyah, DuMarkus, and Derrick, whom I'll tell you a little bit about in just a minute. But we're inviting you to be a part of, what we're calling a little fireside chat amongst friends. We're going to spend the next hour talking about the importance of culture change and also what our panelists are doing individually in terms of how they approach culture change. Before we get started, there are a couple of administrative things that I'd like to mention to you. The first is our segment will be recorded and it will be available to you later on using the conference platform. It will be available until Saturday, that is tomorrow, at 11:50 p.m. And it will also be uploaded on the Sphinx YouTube channel. So following the convening, so you're able to check us out later if you've missed parts of what we're going to discuss today. The next item I'd like to mention is that because we've got such dynamic leaders with us today, I know you're going to want to know more. You're going to want to know more about their work. You're going to want to know more about who they are. And so there will be links in their bio that will take you to information about things they're working on, things they can share that they're working on, but also some works that they've done in the past. So take a look at that. And then the third thing is we have the ability to take your questions. There will be time later on in our discussion to review your questions and answer those questions. So be sure to drop them in the chat. And my friend Ann is going to curate those questions and make sure we get to them. So we hope to get to everything towards the end. And with that, I'm just going to get started. First, I want to introduce my panel. We're going to start with my amazing friend, my new friend, Leyah Barris. Leyah is a 20-year-old writer, director, producer, and the founder of Worthy Cow Productions. Leyah has been making films since she could use a camera, spending countless afternoons as a child with her siblings, recording, editing scenes on iMovie. In high school, Leyah's short films received numerous accolades, awards, including recognition at the All-American High School Film Festival, the National Young Arts Foundation, and the Westflix Righteous Conversations Social Justice Awards. Her work uplifts marginalized voices and highlights socially relevant topics like police brutality, coming of age in America, mental health, the sexualization of Black girls, generational trauma, and more. Today, Leyah is writing and spearheading the development of multiple television projects in both scripted and unscripted formats for studios including HBO Max, Warner Brothers, Viacom CBS. She continues to create powerful, emotional stories and use her platform to advocate for diversity in the arts sector. Please welcome Leyah Barris.
Hi, guys.
Next up is Derrick Jones. Derrick, also known as Dollar Jones, is a self-taught director and entrepreneur. He is the founder of Huxl Republic Films and Red Wire Media and Marketing Group. Derrick started his journey as a recording artist, traveling and performing around the country. He has written and recorded songs that have been placed in TV shows and films on the same networks that now host his visual works, such as MTV, BET, and VH1. His production work has included Grammy Award-winning artists, Fortune 500 companies, major television networks, and magazine companies. Not only does he own multiple companies, but he is also a patented inventor. This Detroit native now resides in the Hollywood of the South, Atlanta, Georgia, where he is currently working on movies and television shows scheduled to be released in 2022. Welcome, Derrick.
Hey, glad to be here.
And good to have you. Our third panelist is DuMarkus Davis. DuMarkus is a committed American violinist, a 2013 Gates Millennium Scholar, and a 2018 San Francisco Conservatory of Music graduate. He is the co-founder and CEO of Musicbuk, a venture-backed company that has raised over $500,000 to give students access to vetted musicians for one-on-one virtual music lessons. DuMarkus is also a member of Forbes 30 Under 30, class of 2021. Welcome, DuMarkus.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, guys.
All right, friends. We've got an hour, and you all know that we've got lots to cover in that hour. And I really want you to just feel comfortable chatting, which is what we're planning to do today. And we're going to talk about culture. So I want to just get right into the topic. Our topic is young, gifted, and bold. The power of emerging leaders in culture. So I'm just going to start right out and ask you, what does culture mean to you? Do you think it's something that's ever evolving? Is it something that's kind of remains the same, but the people talking about it are different? What does it mean?
I can take a stab at it. I think for me, when I think about culture to me is implicit and it's not heavily thought about. I think about the fact that every place you go, every environment you're in has a culture. When you go to the South, you expect the food to taste a certain way. And it's because the culture here says when you walk into a kitchen, there should be butter. If it's not butter in the kitchen, it's probably not a good kitchen to be in. But I think culture is, as you mentioned, constantly evolving as well. And I think what we're seeing a lot today, and the reason why we're having these conversations about culture change, is that we're starting to recognize that we don't necessarily like all of the cultures that we are in and the way certain cultures have existed over time. I think a great example of that is classical music. The Sphinx organization has been so incredible about the work they're doing to change the culture of classical music, because traditionally orchestras have often been dominated by white males. And so here I am as a violinist. For 20 years, I've been the only person who looks like me on a stage in many cases. And now you're starting to see that culture change. Many are just now inviting women to perform with them. And so I think what's happening is the culture is changing because people are actually talking about the fact that maybe this isn't okay. Maybe our normal shouldn't have been normal. And so I think it is constantly evolving.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Leia. Please chime in.
No, I was just going to agree. I do think that the culture is constantly evolving, and I think that the people who evolve the culture are typically the next generation, the youth. And I think back to summer 2019, and I feel like that was, I was out in the streets and protesting with people of all different colors, but mostly young people and of all different sexual orientations and backgrounds, all this stuff. And that was a real moment of cultural change there for me. And I think even if you look back historically, cultural change comes from the youngest generation, the newest generation. And I think we're the driving force then of that change. And we hopefully get to decide where it goes next.
Great point. Let me ask this. When we talk about this shifting, particularly DuMarkus, you mentioned music, and Derrick, as an artist, that music can merge. We've seen, country mixed with rock, and we've seen hip hop mixed with jazz, and we've seen these kinds of shifts. But do you think that culture overall, sort of the broad term of culture, plays a role in all of these mixing of things like music? But there's also movies and clothing. Do you think it's shifting? Do you think that culture shift is happening in those places because There are people like you who are more than one dimension, more than one dimensional, because you've got all these layers and you've got all of these connections to people that influence how you perceive yourself.
Yeah, I think that culture is definitely multi-dimensional, and another thing that's driving culture to change is social media. To be able to see what someone is doing all over the world at any given time, and to see what's cool in one culture or one place they're doing this, and in this place they're going to do that. So, hey, that's cool. Let's try that. And a lot of things are merging as far as music, like hip hop and country music is merging. You know, those cultures. It's a lot of culture change going on. Due to social media, and that's driving it right now.
I totally
That's a
agree.
great point. Yeah, go ahead, DuMarkus.
I would just add to that, I think it's so interesting that you bring up like music and movies and things of that nature, because, and I think it's obvious that it's changing in those particular arenas, because movies and music in particular typically reflect the state of the times. And so we're starting to see a lot more movies that have roots in what is actually taking place historically and what's taking place now. But I think even beyond that, when we like look at the music industry on a deeper level, creatives are starting to change how they are presented in the world. The music industry for so long has been kind of this behemoth. It's been artist managers and the makeup artists, and then like it's just layers and layers and layers of people. And artists are now finding that, why am I giving all of my artistry and my creativity to these organizations who are then paying me cents on the dollar? And so you're starting to see a lot of change in that. And I think from the standpoint of being a leader for that change, that is honestly why I founded my company. When my co-founder and I came together, we were looking at all of these artists who are graduating from top music schools and no one can get a job. And the reason is because there are thousands of musicians who will graduate this year with a degree in violin, but among major orchestras, there might be 10 to 15 positions available. And so when you do that math, less than 1% of those people are probably going to win that job, because you're competing with musicians globally. And that's a major issue. And so when we started thinking about this, we're going, how does a musician build a career just in the current economic climate where you aren't guaranteed a job?
Right.
The people who have jobs are keeping them because there is no chance that they're going to get a job if they leave. And so I think the tides are changing. I think there's a clear shift taking place because people are realizing, if I'm going to do something and I'm going to truly get my value out of it, I need to do it for myself. And I think music, entertainment, technology, all of those are fusing right now to enable people to create their own path. And I think it's really beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'm not from the music world. I'm a huge appreciator, but I mean, even from the world of film and making videos and things for TV, like DuMarkus is saying, the technology that has evolved so quickly to make that so widely accessible. Like, 20 years ago, editing software was a super, high grade. You could only get it professionally. And, I grew up on, it wasn't great editing software, but every computer comes with iMovie, and you can, anybody can go and make something. I think, like Derrick was saying, you see that on social media everywhere now. You go on TikTok and you see artists from all different types of mediums showcasing their work in really, really amazing ways that you can't tell, if a studio made this or if a kid in their bedroom made this. And I think that, like DuMarkus was saying, that there is this reclaiming of power in that, of we get to tell you what our worth is and how much we're going to, get paid, or what we're even going to showcase, what we're going to show. Because I think, like, the music we make, the media we make has been super limited, restricted, because you have to get a contract, you have to get the right people to even show people what you can do. And so they get to tell you what you can make and what you can do and what the topics are about. But when you can go in your bedroom and make an album that, gets you Grammy nominated, that opens up a whole new world into what you can show and who can show it too. I think it's really, it's really awesome.
I love that you mentioned that, because I think that that gets to culture shift. We have these makers who are self-taught, like Derrick, or who are on social media, who would not be seen otherwise, who would not have the space or the opening to be seen by the world and to become phenomenons in their own right. Some of them are extremely talented. Some of them, talent may be in the eye of the beholder. But at the same time, those people are changing the culture. And talk to me about, like, Derrick, you are self-taught. So how did you go from being someone who's self-taught on producing and recording and all of the wonderful things you do? How do you go from doing that in your bedroom or at your kitchen table to doing that for the likes of Grammy award-winning artists and getting that recognition, but also still staying true to who you are, and the undertone of really what you're trying to do is change culture, so you're not fitting into what everybody else is doing?
Well, I had to learn. It took a while. Like most people, I tried to do the traditional thing, go to school and try to, get a job as, most people want to be a doctor, a lawyer, or, something that gets you a lot of money. But like most people, I learned that traditions can be broken, and you can do whatever it is that you have a passion for. The things that you were told as a kid is your hobby, that can be your career, And I started off doing music. That was my passion. And I traveled around. I did tours. I did everything. It was actually pretty good for me. It was during my college years. So I didn't have a job. I didn't really need a job that actually was paying my bills at the time. And that just grew into my next career, which was film and videos, really music videos. And my passion for music and passion for film and music videos is the same. It's creative. I have a passion for just being creative and whatever I do. So that transformed into me doing work for gospel artists, major gospel artists. And I had a job at the factory on the side. I called it my side job. My main job was my creative job, which was music videos.
I love that. I love that the factory job was the side job.
That was the side job, So they found out about my work. Word travels around the plant, and they ended up getting into the administrators and the people in the front office what I did, and they wanted to support me. So I started doing campaigns for the company and getting people motivated in the plant to want to build better cars and to build morale around the plant. I work for Chrysler. Shout out to Chrysler, Fiat. And that just blew up. We was on the news. We were at the auto show and doing commercials and just everything. So I just kept being creative, and I just kept trying to do what it is that I wanted to do until I eventually left. I was able to pack up and leave, and I took the leap of faith and moved down to Atlanta because it was more opportunity in Atlanta. It's more for what I did. That's why I left and went here, and it's been up ever since. I've been just making it, doing what I love to do, and I'm happy.
Awesome. So you talked about organic, and that made me think of, as culture changers, sometimes leaders are anointed, sometimes they're appointed. And I feel like organic, it made me think of anointed. Leyah, a lot of your work is around social change, and that feels anointed. I know it's a passion, but there's an anointing in that. Talk a little bit about, this idea of anointed versus appointed, and are you all of you, and anybody just chime in, but are you on a conscious path to change the culture, or did it just happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't know. I wouldn't say that I am or was on a conscious path. I think that you know, as a 18, 19-year-old kid or whatever, first and foremost at that time, even now at times, I wanted to make movies. I wanted to make TV shows. I wanted to write, and it's my passion. And I think that I also end up writing and talking about and making things that are relevant to my life, are relevant to me, I'm passionate about. And those two things, I think, when they come together and collide together in the perfect way, can happen to make change. And I don't think that I think that there's a lot of to come from purposefully trying to make change, trying to change the culture, change, you know, injustice and all these things. But I think that as an artist and as artist, I the most powerful thing I can do is to make my art in a lot of ways, and that in some way I think has to be removed directly from the idea of purposefully trying to change things. I have a story, I have a message, I have something that I want to say. How people receive that and what comes of that, I think, is something that time can only tell in a lot of ways. And I think that I'm going to continue telling the stories and putting the messages out there that are important to me. But I think that if we get too caught up in being change makers actively and not artists, I think that it can get really easy to get discouraged. I think that you know, change is something that happens very quickly and very slowly and moves forward and backwards all at the same time. And I think that if that is your driving force, is your only thing as an artist, it's really easy just to get stuck and super discouraged. I mean, like I was talking about 2019, summer 2019 or 2020 earlier, I think that in that time I was writing a lot. I had a lot to say. I had a lot of great stories and was super inspired. And I think very quickly after that, it felt like there was sort of this very quick reversal and nobody was talking about anything. And I think that it was super easy to, if I relied on what happened there solely, it was super easy to not be able to create anymore, to not be able to continue this message. Yeah.
Awesome. I could chime in there too. Deidre, we're gonna have to have a talk after this because I'm from the Bible Belt. So you're using words like anointed and appointed, and I get ready to shout. But I think for me, at a young age, I think at a young age, other people recognized my anointing, and it was scary. And that came in a lot of ways. One, just being from the family that I was from, I was a well-spoken Black kid, Black boy, to add to that. And that made me very unique in a lot of rooms. But then to kind of add insult to injury, we just kind of keep beating down the uniqueness of a kid. Then I wanted to play violin. No one else was playing the violin who looked like me. So I was always in rooms where other people didn't look like me, but I was able to assimilate. My friends, I have tons of international friends now because that's just what I grew up around. Kids coming from around the world who played the violin, and they had never seen anyone who looked like me. And to me, being in those rooms was normal. And as I got older, I think my anointing led to my appointment in many places. And sometimes it wasn't always that I wanted to do it, because I can tell you the scariest thing is knowing that you are called to do something, but when you start to get a glimpse of how big it is, asking the question, well, why me? And why is it my responsibility to do that? And so for me, what's kind of kept me grounded in all of that is definitely my family, but being focused on why I'm doing what I'm doing. For me, it's never been about being a change maker, because I think so often young people right now get caught up into the glamour of being a change maker or a culture shifter and being on this list and that list and getting these awards. But for me, I think the focus has always been, I want to affect change for millions of people who have gone through the same struggles that I did. I was a child of the recession. And so when I picked up the violin, it was about a year before the entire housing market crashed. And so not to go too deep, but my parents lost their jobs within 2 weeks of each other. We went from being one of those families who bought a house for $1 because it was like this too good to be true offer with a flexible interest rate. And both of my parents had great jobs at the airport, making 6 figures collectively. Like, we were normal middle-class family by all standards. And within 2 weeks, my life flipped. But a year before that, I picked up the violin, and the violin made room for me to help my parents with bills, because when they no longer had jobs, I could still go do a gig. And so that put me on a pedestal in many places. People were going, who's this Black kid playing a violin for me? And I was able to help keep food on the table at times when it got really hard for my family. And so because of that, it put me out on Front Street. And in hindsight, I'm able to look at all of these different situations where I go, why am I doing this? Why was I there? But it's prepared me for moments like this, to be comfortable speaking in front of people, even performing in front of people. And so for me, when I look back at why I do the work that I do, it's always been to affect change for people like me. First, with my company, it was, I wasn't able to find a music instructor. Why aren't people who are from the communities outside of classical music able to find a music instructor? We should be able to change that. When I got to the San Francisco Conservatory, I remember very uniquely, there were, I think, 7 Black students in our entire school. And then the following year was our 100th year anniversary. And we had 19 Black students. And we found out that we were the most Black students on record in the 100-year history of the school. And talking about anointment leading to appointment, that led me to become the first Black student body president at the San Francisco Conservatory. Wow. And because I was the first person in that room, I ended up working with the board of the San Francisco Symphony and doing a lot of other things where people like me hadn't been. I remember distinctly speaking at a press conference, and these were some of the wealthiest people in California, honestly, the world. And I was the only person who looked like me. I'm talking, even the help in the room was not Black.
Wow.
The only person in the room. And so that's one of those moments.
Did you get mistaken? Did you get mistaken for somebody who should have been doing something else?
Not at all. Not at all. They knew I was student body president.
Good. All right. Amen. 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 Amen.
But I was fortunate that I was able to work with the leadership of the San Francisco Conservatory to help bring about change. And since then, and since graduating, that work has continued because we've had other students come back. We have an established student body, student government at the conservatory. And you hear about things they're doing now, like they just announced it's a scholarship for students to actually perform with the San Francisco Ballet, and specifically African-American students while they are students at the San Francisco Conservatory. And so sometimes it doesn't always make sense. And I'm going to shut up here because I realize I've been talking for a moment, but sometimes it doesn't
it's
always
quite all right.
But you end up in rooms, and sometimes you're the only person who looks like you in that room, and it doesn't make sense, and it's scary and it's uncomfortable, but it makes room for other people to come behind you. And I think that is what you said in a nutshell, anointing leading to that appointment, and you just have to walk in it.
Yeah. You know, I recently was asked a question about authentic leadership, and what my thought about authentic leadership was. And one of the questions was around, you know, how did you get to do what you do, or what advice would you have? And one of the things I said is, you know, do something that scares you, as opposed to say yes to the things that scare you, as opposed to saying yes to the things that are easy for you to do. And I live by that, because those are the things that you do it for the right reasons. But I think those are the things that lead to the appointment. And because you say yes, you know, it leads to the appointment. And it made me think of, you know, what you said, DuMarkus, made me think of the actress Danielle Brooks. She was in Orange is the New Black. And she talked about, I just recently read this article, and she talked about how because of the character she played in that show, people mistook her for being someone. She said she was at an event and a very well-known actress asked her, where do they find you, on the street? Because of and not because she was not great at her craft, but because they just thought for her to play that type of character, she had to have lived that experience. They didn't realize that she was a trained actress, that she had a very storied background in terms of her training and her building her craft, and she was offended, and she should have been. And I think, you know, what you just said about, there's something that prepares you to be in a room, and there's also something that prepares you for the anointing. And I'm not going to take us to church right this second, but I think there's a lot to that. There is that. There's preparation. There is saying yes to the things that make you a little nervous and make you scared, because those things prepare you for what's to come. And once you do it, you realize it's not as scary as you might have thought it was. It's just kind of that thing that you put in your head that says you can't do it. So with that, I want to ask you all, you know, DuMarkus, you talked about being in rooms where you were the only person who looked like you, and not understanding why you couldn't find someone who looked like you to teach you. So was there one moment, was there one event, was there something that shifted you and made you all become, I use the word that sparked your desire to be bold? And you may not think of yourselves as bold. You may not think of yourselves in that way, but you are, because all of you are doing something, even although different in different ways, you're doing things that uniquely change the face of our culture. And you're impacting people who look like you, not just all over this country, but all over the world. So was there one thing? Was there something that shifted the atmosphere for you? Now I'm really going to church, DuMarkus. What shifted the atmosphere for you?
Deidre, I'm not going to play with you today.
I'm not a preacher. I'm not a preacher. I'm not a preacher.
You could have fooled me. I don't think for me there was any one thing. I am fortunate that my parents at a young age, they knew I was different. And so at a very young age, you know, I didn't have a lot of friends. I was getting pulled out of classes because in many cases, I was ahead of the kids who were in class with me. And so I came in for additional support. And so it was just always, I was always kind of individualized, if you will. And the way my parents helped me cope with that, because I was like, well, why don't I have friends? Well, why didn't I get invited to this party? My mom would just go, sweetie, you're different. And it's okay to be different. And I had teachers who reinforced that. I remember my third grade teacher, Ms. Bonds. She always used to say to us, she goes, sweetie, you all are just different, but know this, the different kids are the ones people will work for in the future. And you hear that so much from people and you kind of don't think about it. But honestly, it shaped my thinking at a young age. And fortunately, it wasn't the worst thing in the world. Therapy has evened me out over the years. But I mean, over the years, you know, I just kind of keep that in the back of my head when kids would belittle me or talk about me, because I was bullied a lot in school, too. In the back of my head, I just went, one day they'll work for me. And it was not even a cocky thing. It was just like, this is what people had told me. And I started to believe And over time, I mean, little did I know, a lot of people would work for me. And I'm fortunate that my company, we have been able to create jobs. And so I don't, as much as I joke about that, I do take it very seriously, the responsibility that we have to create jobs for artists to be able to thrive in today's economy. But I mean, I don't think there was ever a moment where I was like, I'm going to be bold. I think there was a shift mentally as I grew up that you have to walk in your boldness. And so let that make you who you are. As much as people talk about him, Kanye West is like the person who will go all the time. There's never going to be another Kanye West. There's just me. And so I think, you know, there is some truth to what he says. There's only ever going to be one you. So walk in who you are and be bold about that.
I think that's super interesting. DuMarkus would say that. I came from a very different background. I went to very predominantly white high school, and I think like it was going into this predominantly white high school that I, found my boldness. But I think that I learned actually I feel like I grew up, thinking, I was the top of the class. I was, the Black girl who's super smart and all these things, and who didn't necessarily fit the stereotypes I think that we often attribute to Black girls, Black people in general. And I went to a predominantly white high school and found my group of friends who were mostly people of color who a majority of them were on financial aid, and we were the loud table at lunch and we played sports, and in a lot of ways we fit a lot of these like stereotypes that we've been told are so negative our whole life. And we had the best time. We laughed way more than anybody else there, and we stuck by each other, and together we faced, at this huge predominantly white, wealthy institution, we faced a lot of, racism and prejudice and all these events together. And I learned, I think, from them and from my friend groups that it wasn't a desire to be bold. It was a necessity. It was a necessity to be bold. It was what we had to do. I think that in a lot of ways, growing up before that friend group, sort of tried to embody the, antithesis of these stereotypes. I tried to be quiet. I tried to, not be super aggressive in my sports and all these things when and getting to know these friends and having this friend group, learning that the antithesis, being the antithesis is not any better than being the archetype. It's the somewhere in between there you find yourself, because stereotypes are not while they're prejudicial and unfair, you don't have to be the opposite of that, because in that, in some way, is fitting yourself into the same sort of caricature type of thing. And I don't know why I'm forgetting the name of the play. I remember seeing a play in high school. Had the opportunity to take a lot of great classes, and we saw a play about Martin Luther King, and it was about his life, and it was very controversial because it didn't show him in a bad light, but it showed him in all of his flaws. It showed him in the things that we don't usually talk about. And I remember seeing this play changed a lot about the way that I thought about leadership and boldness, because I think we often see our leaders as people who are special, people who are born with this different thing, with this gift. And I think sometimes that can be really harmful to who we consider change makers, who we consider leaders. They can really close it off. I think sometimes it can play into these stereotypes that you have to be sort of the antithesis to make change, to be a leader. But seeing that the people that we know as leaders, the Martin Luther Kings, Malcolm X, all these people, they were flawed people. They were quote unquote immoral people in some way, because they were people, they were human beings, and that anybody can be that change maker, anybody can be that leader, that next person was really important to me.
Yeah. For me, I always knew the type of person that I wanted to grow up and be. I always wanted to be a leader, always wanted to be in charge, always wanted to have my own businesses and hotels and things like that. I didn't know how I was going to get there, but growing up in Detroit, with all of the crime and seeing family members go to jail or be killed, I always wanted to be better and always wanted to be in a position to help people, out and to be better. So that it still pushes me today to try to be better and just to go hard. I also knew I didn't want to do it. Well, I realized doing it the traditional way of, going to school to just do business or be a lawyer or whatever I wanted to be wasn't going to work out either. Then I found out that my passion for creating and doing, music and videos could be the way. It was just more so about me figuring out. Okay. Did y'all hear that?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So it just was about me figuring out how I wanted to do it. But ever since I was young, I always knew I wanted to stand out and just be, and always been a soft-spoken, kind of laid back, behind the scenes type of person. But I always wanted to make big moves. I like to speak with my work. I like to speak with the things that I do.
So there was a question, and I said we were going to save questions for later, but there is a question that popped up in the chat that I think is so relevant to what you all are speaking about right now. And it's, how does the pressure of being young and Black in your field affect you? Do you ever feel like there's an extraordinarily high expectation for the rest of your career? Or how do you deal with that? So, again, this idea of, being bold and being leaders, but, is there this vision that you've got to live up to, particularly in each of your individual fields, to make you feel successful, and how do you resist? And how do you manage and handle that pressure?
Yeah, I think that, growing up as a young Black woman, something my mom always said to me is, you're going to have to work 10 times harder than the person next to you to be successful in a lot of the things that you want to be successful in. And I think that as an idea, as a concept, is always sort of in the back of my head through elementary, middle, high school, college now. That I think in my career, in being Black in my career, I think that, and fortunately, I think that I'm coming into the entertainment business right now at a time where they're looking for young voices, where they're looking for young Black voices. And just like I think they're looking for that right now, I have to be aware that it's, the entertainment business is always moving and changing, and that's not going to be forever. And using that to my advantage right now. But ultimately, moving forward, all I can do, I feel like, is make the best content and art, and send the best message that I can as an artist. And I think that if I focus too much on how do I make that last, how do I make that, how do I keep that consistent, I think that sometimes it's a question that'll drive you crazy. I think that all you can do is put your best work out there, put your best foot out there, try to understand what is going on right now in the market and what people are looking for. But once you're in and once you're doing it, within your values and morals, keep doing it, keep doing your work, because there's, everything is consistently and constantly changing. And if you try to track that for the rest of your life, I think that's how you lose sort of your message, what you were trying to say, what you're trying to create, because it's not going to be forever. I think that the entertainment industry is looking for diverse young voices, and I don't want to, at least when that shift happens, when that moment changes, I don't want to all of a sudden change what my message is. And I think it's, if you have the mindset of how do I stay in this, how do I keep going, focused on that, it's really easy to find that your work doesn't actually track with what you believe, but what people want.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so somebody else asked a question, and I think this also fits this point of our conversation, and that's about mentorship. So what I'd like to know is, who do you guys have official mentors? Do you mentor others? And how do you make those relationships mutually beneficial? How does that work? And what do you feel like you gain from it?
So yeah, I can take a stab at that. I absolutely have mentors, and I totally echo the points that Leyah mentioned as well. I think there's an extraordinarily high pressure, especially when you are the first person to do something, to deliver, because you want to make sure, or let me not say that. I have wanted to make sure that there was room for other people to come behind me and do the same thing. And so that means I have to perform at the peak of my game so that people aren't scared, because at the end of the day, people pattern match. And I think what has helped with that is therapy and mentorship. So I think it's the perfect segue. Like, therapy helped me to realize, yes, even though society does have their own expectations of me, the only expectation that matters is myself. And my mentors helped me see that as well. Most of my mentors, I will be totally honest with you, have been 30 or 40 plus years older than me. They're older business.
Wow.
I have been hanging around these guys since I was 12 and 13 years old, actually a little bit earlier. But I can count Juan Casimiro, Scott Schickler, Mitch Schlimmer, all of these guys imparted into me at a young age wisdom that they got in their 30s and 40s. And so some would say I'm an old soul, but I think I think to the second part of that question about like the idea of making these relationships mutually beneficial, I think our generation is oftentimes a little bit too caught up into what am I going to get out of this and what is this person going to get out of this and making everything a transaction. And the most valuable relationships that I've had with these people are honestly just building real friendships. Now, it sounds crazy for a 12-year-old to be building a friendship with a 45-year-old, but hey, my parents were there.
As long as your parents were around, right?
Exactly. They were there. They supported it. But these guys have become mentors and friends. And I think of it when I've been looking for a mentor in the past, my thought process around it is how can I add value to your life? Because typically the people who I want to mentor me are in some way or form where I want to be. And so I'm going, how can I make your life easier? Because I realize you giving me even a few minutes of your time is super valuable because you could be doing a lot of other things than talking to little old me. And so I think if we stop thinking about these types of things as transactions and more, how can I just be genuine and add value to this person's life? It becomes so different. I mean, I even think about Aaron Dworkin, the founder of the organization. He's been an incredible mentor to me. And these are people who like, they don't have time to like deal with the little people like me. And so I think just truly.
Aaron would beg to differ.
I love him and Alpha. Like I think being grateful and making sure that you are making the most of that time that you get with them, even if it's only 5 or 10 minutes. When I go in and I'm asking for a few minutes of these people's time, I'm making sure to go in and I'm like, here's the laundry list. Please help. So that you can make the most of that time so that they know that you value their time. And then when you can, if you can volunteer for something, anything you do, that's when you step up and then you add value to those people's lives. And I think that's how the relationship becomes mutually beneficial. But I think going in it with the idea of it being a transaction is the wrong way to approach it.
Yeah, I mean, just to highlight one thing DuMarkus and a lot of what he said, therapy. Just I think everyone should do therapy. I think at any point in your life, I think it's great. It's been like one of the biggest life changers and helpful things to me. But I think that highlighting that making mentorships non-transactional, I think is really helpful. I mean, I think that people want to keep people around them who they like as people. Have a good conversation with somebody, ask somebody about their day, ask somebody about what they're doing, be genuinely interested, inspired by somebody. I think that they will give you and impart on you all the wisdom that they can out of just gratitude for your friendship, for your support, and your curiosity about their life. I think that like I was talking about my high school friends earlier, I think that in some ways, in terms of partnerships, I'm a big fan of bringing your crew up with you, of working with the people around you. I mean, there's some of the funniest people I know, my high school friends, and we used to sit around and tell jokes that I'm still pulling into my writing, and I'm, calling them up and like, you remember that day that we were talking about? What was that joke again? And, I've told all of them that I'd love to write with you, or I know this one person was really into graphic design, hey, can you do this graphic for me? I've called people and, they hadn't talked to in months, but who I was really good friends with, were incredibly talented musicians. It was like, hey, can you score this scene for me? Are you interested in doing that? And bringing up the people around you as you find your success, I think is really important, not just to bring them up just because, but because I think at young ages, when you have these friendships, when you have these non-transactional sort of mentorships and friendships, that's when you truly get to know people. You know that those people are talented and that they are passionate and that they care about you and they have your back. And I think that that's a really important thing. And I think that in terms of mentorship, I think I find it a lot of places. I think I tend to find it in women, in Black women specifically. I mean, Deidre, we were talking the other day, and you said to me, you were like, I kept saying sorry about being Leia, I think, and you were like, Leia, stop saying sorry so much. Black women and women in particular say sorry so much. They don't need, and like, even that moment to me, that's a moment of mentorship. Like that was something that for the rest of my day, or even to this moment, I'm thinking about. I'm so grateful to be able to work with right now in my show, a writer named D. Harris Lawrence, who she did a show called David Makes Man. She's incredibly talented. She's super awesome. And I'm really grateful to be able to go to her for writing advice in the industry, to have a conversation, to talk about where to find the best furniture in LA, when I moved into my apartment, on things like that. So I think, yeah, just like DuMarkus said, just looking for friendship, looking for something that's not transactional, that's mutual, and remembering the people who gave you that, even in times where they're not maybe in this position they have something to offer you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So just a little bit, we've got about 10 minutes, and there's so many questions to some audience questions. And I see my screen spinning, so I'm hoping that my internet is not being weird. Give me a thumbs up if you can see me and hear me. All right, cool. Okay, so here's my question. All right, perfect. My question is this: you are all creatives, you are all business people. Do you believe that at one point or another, one side suffers or should suffer for the sake of the other? Like, does creativity always win? Or, what's the balance between that and the business side? Because you've got to keep the business side together. How do you balance that?
Yeah, I don't want to. I'll just talk real quick, just because I recently was pitching and selling things, and sort of my first process of doing that's very interesting. Because a producer is not necessarily a creative producer, especially when you're talking about a studio head or something. They are, in the business of money in some way, of securing their investment. I think that the most helpful piece of advice that I got on that, in terms of adjusting and making changes, was just be aware of what you need to fight for. You can't fight for everything. So the things that you do want to fight for, make sure you are making room and being able to compromise on certain things, so that when it is time to put your foot down and say that, no, this is something that I need to have, or that needs to stay, you're not just somebody who is completely unwilling to compromise across the board. So I think for me, that's manifested in themes, mostly in ideas of inclusion, of ideas of inclusion of skin colors, and of orientation, of all these things that, sometimes creatively, story-wise, I'll have to be like, you know what, yeah, I can change that one, I can let that go. And learn how to take notes in terms of incorporating what someone has said. Does not mean copying down what they have said, and does not mean changing the thing exactly to what they want. That as an artist, that incorporation looks like interpretation, and your interpretation sometimes can satisfy that note without it being exactly that change. Yeah.
With me, sometimes, dealing with different clients, different artists, I'm working on, say, for example, a music video. I want it to be perfect. I want to be as creative as possible. I want it to reach as many people as possible, but then they have, deadlines, so it's like, oh, where do I stop? I know I can do so much more, but then I need to get them out and get the next project in, but I want to do more, so sometimes I battle with that, but for the most part, I keep it pretty balanced.
I would say yes.
I think that's interesting, the perfectionism, and we need a whole nother panel on perfectionism. Go ahead, DuMarkus.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I totally agree. For me, I mean, the business typically wins out because I have to manage a team of 8 people who are building technology. So that means I can't practice. So, I mean, it's a hard trade-off, but I'm used to practicing for 6 or 7 hours a day from conservatory. But now that 6 or 7 hours is dedicated to building a company.
Mm-hmm. So somebody asked, what advice would you give to future entrepreneurs And what does success look like for you?
I can take a quick stab at that. My advice is always, and this is going to sound cliche.
Your quick stabs, DuMarkus, your quick stabs are like words of wisdom that go on, that are going to live in infamy. Go ahead.
I love it. I say don't do it. I say don't do it. Unless if every morning you wake up and there's a problem that you want to solve and you have to solve and that's all you can think about, that's when you should go and be an entrepreneur. But if you were just doing it to make some quick money, I mean, there are people who do it and make a bunch of money, so I'm not negating that either. But if you were just doing entrepreneurship for the glamour or to sit on panels like this or do things, don't do it. You have to truly be committed to the problem that you're solving, because at the end of the day, that's what gets you through those dark moments. I've had opportunities where I sit on panels like this and I don't know how I'm going to pay my staff the next day. And I have to sit up here and I have to project to the world that everything is okay and that I'm building this great company, knowing that our bank account is in the negative. And so that is, your passion has to carry you through those moments. And entrepreneurship is not easy. And the second part of that question, what does success look like for me? For me personally, I will feel successful when I know I have changed the lives of millions, if not billions of people. I want to leave the world a better place than I found it.
Let me jump in. So the advice I would give is to commit. Know that is what it is that you want to do, whatever you are anointed with, whatever it is that you love to do, whatever it is that you do easiest. Do that, commit to it, know that it's not going to be easy. Know it's going to be the hardest thing that you're going to do. It's going to be ups, it's going to be down. But have your mind set that there's no plan B. There's no, it's just one way straight to the end of the tunnel. Okay, focus. What success looks like for me is being able to have the time to do whatever it is I wake up and desire to do. Whether spend time with family, spend the money, time. I used to think that money was everything, but it's not. You lose money, you can get it back. You lose time, you can't get it back. So spending that time is important. So for me, being able to spend time the way I want, how I want, is success for me.
Yeah, and one last thing. I'm not sure I will ever change the lives of millions, or definitely not billions of people. But
you already have. You already have.
I would like to think that I can be successful within myself without that. Success to me is being proud of myself. I was on the verge of, a project that I spent a year of, like, what was supposed to be my college years, or year, like this huge year. It was on the verge of falling apart, not getting sold. And I called my mom, and I'm like crying to her, and my mom, I think, go back to mentors. My mom is definitely one of my mentors. And she was just like, I'm so proud of you. She was just like, whatever happens, I'm so proud of you. And being able to say that to myself at the end of the day, whatever happens, if anything, I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of what I did. I think that's success to me, whether that means I affect millions and billions of people, or nobody ever, but the people I pitched to ever see the light of the show. It doesn't see the light of day. As long as I can go to bed saying I'm proud of myself, I think that I've been successful.
I'm going to add my 2 cents to this question, and I've tried to restrain myself because I can talk to you all until next week. But as an entrepreneur, I think it's important to just share, because some of what you've said has nothing to do with your age, right? It has nothing to do with being young in business, but it has everything to do with the spirit in which you've started the work that you do, and the enthusiasm and passion that you bring to that work. Derrick, you talked about passion, and I remember a time when I had to lay off half my staff because we lost a big client. And in the midst of that, people were calling me, or I'd go places and they would mention, she's such a great entrepreneur. She's such a leader. And in my head, I'm like, you have no idea that half of my staff is about to have to go home. But I think what came out of that was the way my partners and I handled the situation. There was nothing we could do to stop it, but there were lots of things that we did that handled it, that made it, less scary as it could be on the people who were impacted. And in that case, without going into a lot of details, some of those people were calling me saying, Deidre, are you okay? I know you have to do this. I know that you're not doing this because, you had a bad day or you don't like these people, but we understand that it's about the business and you have to make these changes to keep the business going. So when you talk about, that it really it drives you. I'm going to stop here because I think our time is up, unfortunately, and that was a really fast hour, but I want to thank you all for being here today. Thank you for imparting your words of wisdom. This was so much fun, and I hope we all and you all can stay connected. Thank you to our viewers. Enjoy the rest of the convening.
Thank you all. Bye for now.
Bye. Thank you, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.